be showing you a lesson on life sciences in the 4th grade. I'm going to be using this text, Picture Perfect Science Lesson. And the standards that we're going to use today are Standard 2 of Life Science. It says all living things share similar characteristics, but they also have differences that can be described and classified. A subset of that is analyze and interpret data representing variation in a trait, and examine, evaluate, question, and ethically use information from a variety of media sources to investigate questions about characteristics of living things. So that's our content or standards for today. By the end of the lesson, I expect the students to explain and analyze how ducks survive by reading about them, to observe or understand the structures of the duck and the functions that they serve, as well as their behaviors, and to find out how those behaviors affect survival. So to start off, to engage the students, we will read aloud just ducks, and I will then give them a few questions. Have you ever seen ducks swimming in a lake? If so, where? We might have them turn to a partner and share those answers. And then we might ask another question: if ducks spend so much time in the water, how do you think they keep from getting too cold or too wet? Those would be some engaging questions to ask the students after you read that book. Then we would go ahead to the Explore section. And this is where we'll tell the students about this author and that she is a specific person that studies animals, and specifically ducks. And we're going to be kind of like her and study about ducks. And maybe I would ask some more questions like what would be the best place for studying about ducks. And we're pretty fortunate in this area of Eagle County that we have a pond in the neighborhood right next to us that have a habitat perfect for ducks, and they are there a lot in the fall and in the spring. So I would try and gear this lesson around that time so that we could go there and use some hands-on activity for obviously our kinesthetic learners and all of them. So in this book, our textbook, they have an example, and it's called My Duck Journal. It's several pages long, so it gives you an opportunity to go through this entire lesson over a few days and have them observe, write about, think about different things, make charts about vocabulary words that they'll be learning. And so then we'll move on to, or during that phase, we would maybe go to that pond and take a look at the ducks. Then we will do our explain. Students will share a duck drawing of their journal with a partner. So for that, we would have taken our duck journals to the pond. We've drawn observations, pictures, what ducks look like, what their behaviors look like, what they were doing. I may draw name sticks to get this conversation started and give everybody an opportunity to do it. We can use the whiteboard as well as a tool for our visual and kinesthetic learners. And let's see, then I'll reread the book, and we will notice in this book that there are some large print and small print. And maybe we'll talk about, this would be part of a literacy standard, why the author uses the larger print and the smaller print, what's the difference, and showing that the students that the factual stuff is in the smaller print. We can talk about how it has two purposes. It's telling a story and it's giving us information, so it's got some nonfiction and fiction in it. And then we can go ahead as a whole class and make a chart. I like to use a T-chart on the board to maybe discuss the things that they saw in the book and talk about some of the vocabulary that we'll be introducing. And then we'll go on to one part of elaborate. Let's see. We're going to tell the students that we're going to learn a little bit more about preening, which is one of the words we learned in vocabulary, and that's something we'll look into using an index in that book to learn how to find where that stuff is at in the book and find the page. We'll go to page 9 and read about preening. And then maybe we can ask questions again. Did anyone observe a duck preening while they were out at the pond? And then we're going to go into an activity where we have groups, and each group will get a plastic container, half full of water, and a bottle of food coloring, and they'll put 2 drops of food coloring in the water and reseal it, shake it up, record the observations. So that'll be done a few times, and then it's also going to be done with oil, and you can check in the lesson plans for that. And I will have some video, hopefully, of some students doing that activity. And then we'll, after we're done with those observations and those things, we'll go back to explain, and that'll be reading another book. And this lesson is obviously not done in one day, it's over a few days. The book is called Ducks Don't Get Wet, and I hope everyone loves my duck theme in the background. This book will explain the structures and behaviors that help ducks survive. And so then we'll go through a series of questioning, explaining each purpose and behavior of the ducks, which is known as the function. And then the students will have an opportunity to fill out their chart in their duck journal, and that's a T-chart, and it's got structures on one side and functions and behaviors and functions. So we can go ahead and do that and fill in those T-charts. The next thing, again, we are going to have another elaborate. And this is where we're going to further explore that preening behavior just to see how it works. We'll have groups set up. They each get feathers and shallow bowls of vegetable oil and spray bottles with waters. So they'll take the feather, dip it into the water and see that it gets wet, and then they'll take it out. And then we'll do another feather where they will spray or put oil on that feather and then spray it and see the differences and observe in their journals what was different when it had the oil and when it did not have the oil. And then we can use this for an opportunity to synthesize how does the activity relate to something that we read in the book. And across this lesson you can integrate all parts of literacy, writing, reading, and then we'll move on to the evaluate. And so what will happen there is students will use page 6 of their duck journals. They'll answer the questions, why don't ducks get wet? We'll use this to evaluate whether they write an accurate explanation using all of the following vocabulary: structure, behavior, oil, feathers, preening, oil glands, all the vocabulary that we have introduced. And I also have a vocabulary sort that I was going to maybe send home with the students that wanted to or maybe needed the extra help with, that they can kind of use like flashcards in learning those vocabularies. I've got lots of different strategies for differentiation listed in our lesson plan. Hands-on projects, movements, sense of touch. They get to touch and feel the oil in the water and the feathers. They get to draw. They get to see the ducks. They get to use see the books and use the books. And we have small groups for those kiddos that do really well in that setting. And then we also have the individual assessment with the writing, so that would be their interpersonal. And then they would use reasoning to determine how ducks survive. So that would be our logical one. Accommodations at the classroom I'm in, we do not have any. We have a couple ELL students that would require a little assistance, and I would probably give all this information to the ELL teacher. That way she can introduce those vocabulary words and work with them. If we had any other needs, then I would be addressing them accordingly to what we need. And so as far as assessment goes, in the beginning of the lesson, the questioning can serve as a pre-assessment. The whole group, when we're writing things about what they know, could be a pre-assessment. The students are going to have opportunities to post those things to the wonder wall that we have in our room, and that's just asking questions, kind of like the KWL chart. And then formative, I'll use their journal to review each page in each lesson, and that way I can see how they were doing throughout. And then my post-assessment would be using page 6. And so I hope you enjoyed this. I'm going to also include some videos of some kiddos using the materials and explaining differences. If you have any